This reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda, based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. This week's topic is the infinite Christ. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The Gospel of St. John contains some of the most profound spiritual teachings in the Bible. In the first chapter, many subtle truths are suggested concerning higher stages of self-realization. Here, John the Baptist is described as one reaching up toward that high state. He was not that light, the Gospel tells us, but was sent to bear witness of that light. Jesus Christ, by contrast, is described as the light itself. That was the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. One essential truth stands out in this teaching, that Jesus came not to dogmatize people with a new teaching, but to bring them timeless, universal truths. Disciples saw the Master clothed in human form, and therefore judged him in terms of his greatness relative to the greatness of other teachers. Wisdom, however, sees the Master's very greatness in terms of a cosmic unity. There is a passage in The Path by Swami Kriyananda in which this point is emphasized. The Master, Paramhansa Yogananda, explained, "The saint who attains that exalted consciousness never says, 'I am God,' for he sees it was the vast ocean that became his little wave of ego. The wave, in other words, would not claim, when referring to the little self, to be the ocean." At this juncture, Debbie, who was present, cried excitedly, "But sir, if you are one with that ocean, that means you are God." "Why, I," Master asked, "say he is God." "But still, sir, you are one with him, and he is the only reality. That means you, too, are God." "But this body isn't God." "You aren't identified with your body, sir, so one may still say that you are God." "Well, in that case, why do you say you? You, too, are that." In a discussion of this sort, it is less confusing if we say he. "But what's the difference?" "The scriptures say," Master began. "It's only your humility, sir," Debbie broke in, "that makes you distinguish between yourself and him." "How can there be humility when there is no consciousness of ego?" Triumphantly, Debbie cried, "But if you have no ego left, that means you are God." Master laughingly continued the earlier statement which Debbie had interrupted. "The scriptures say, 'He who knows Brahma becomes Brahma.'" "There," Debbie cried, "you said it yourself." Master rejoined, still laughingly, "I didn't say it. It's the scriptures that say so." Master, in other words, would not identify those words with the human body that was speaking them. It was in his overarching spirit that he saw himself one with the infinite. But Debbie was unable to make this mental leap from a pure expression of infinity to infinity itself. "You quoted those scriptures, sir," he reminded Master relentlessly. "That means you agree with them." Recognizing that the distinction was perhaps too subtle for many to grasp, Master concluded, "Well, he who says he is God isn't God, and," he added with a smile, "he who says he isn't. And there the subject rested amid general laughter. The greater a spiritual teaching, the more greatly we would betray it by particularizing it with dogmas. Truth itself, not the Christian truth or the Hindu truth, incarnates on earth with the birth of a fully liberated Master. As the Bhagavad Gita teaches in the 4th chapter, unborn, changeless, Lord of creation and controller of my cosmic nature, though I am. Yet entering nature, I am dressed in the cosmic garment of my own Maya, delusion. O Bharata, whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate on earth. Taking visible form, I come to destroy evil and re-establish virtue. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning, everyone. Dharmadas and I were away for a few days, and we were up on the coast near the Oregon border, and we got to walk on the beach every day. We didn't see any whales, and we also hiked in the redwoods. It was fantastic. I'm remembering one hike. I was a little tired that day, so we were just going to do a 2-mile loop. We found this trail that was supposed to be 2 miles. I thought, perfect, I can do 2 miles. Turned out to be 6 miles. And a whole stretch of it, felt like most of it, was really deep sand, which was hard to walk in. And I thought, I have my cell phone. I can always call for a helicopter, if it gets too bad. But it's good to push yourself. It's good to see when you're expecting one thing, to have something else open up and see how you do. That's really good. So the last day we were there, we walked on the beach every day, as I said. And I was thinking, but we never saw any whales. And sure enough, that afternoon, they were just playing in the ocean. There were at least 4, probably more, because they kept breaching, and every once in a while, this eye would be visible, like, I am seeing you out there. I know who you are. And going away is really important to see a broader view, not just theoretically, but literally. I remember there was a time when Dharmadas and I worked in publishing Swami's books, and we were really drilled in on the computer and the typesetting and the design. And, when I did book covers, I had to get into, I used a lot of Swami's photographs, so I'd get into the pixels and make sure the pixels were all straight, and it was definitely boring into a small thing. And I remember we took a trip, drove down to Palm Springs. Somebody had offered us a little place to stay there for a while, and we were driving through these hills, and then suddenly it opened up, and there was this vast plain ringed with mountains. And it was like heaven had opened up in the mind. You see that expansive view, and your mind expands. It's the miracle of nature. And just contemplating that vast ocean these last few days has just been wonderful. And watching the whales just playing. Every once in a while, 2 would breach at the same time. You could tell they were just swimming next to each other, just playing. And they played all afternoon. We watched them for hours. And watching that horizon line, we had a good view, seeing the curvature of the earth and that very definite line. Swami said we should meditate on that line. The ocean is subconsciousness, that line is consciousness, and the sky is superconsciousness. So it's good to meditate on that. There's so much more going on in this world. Dharmadas, during the fire ceremony, was talking about visualizing the light of the fire, the flame at the spiritual eye. Because we are each a little spark of that divine light. That's what keeps us, that's what animates us, keeps us alive, gives us that spark of life. If you look at, I haven't personally done this, but I've read about people who have. If you look through an electron microscope, my hand resting on this table, you can hardly tell where the hand ends and the table starts. It's all electrons. It's all little bursts of light. It's energy. We think we're separate beings, but we're more united than we think. There's very little that's definite in this world. It's all in flux. It's all energy. That's why we can change our lives just by changing how we think. Think of yourself as that vessel of light. That's what we really are. That's our true nature. I was reminded of a story when this reading was talking about when virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate on earth to get rid of evil and reestablish virtue. I incarnate on earth. So this is a true story about a man who didn't think much of religion and really couldn't get into Christmas. It was just God incarnating on earth. What does that mean? Why? He just didn't understand it, and it was difficult for him. So his family on Christmas Eve, his wife said, "You want to come to service with us?" The man said, "No, I'm going to read my book." So he stayed home. It got dark, got late. It was a late evening service. And he was sitting with the lamp on by his chair, reading his book, and he heard this thump on the window next to him. And didn't know what that was. It was snowing, but it was too late for any kids to be out throwing snowballs. And he just kept on reading, and he heard it again. Thump. So he went over, and he looked out, and there were birds in the snow on the ground, and they were attracted to the light. So he turned off the light, and he went outside, put his hat and coat on and his boots, and he went outside, and he thought, I'll turn on the light in the barn, and then they'll know they can go into the barn where they can get dried off. They were all sopping wet and cold. They can dry off and they can get warm in the barn. So he went out there and he turned on the lights, he opened the doors, and the birds stayed on the ground. And he started clapping at them and shooing them into the barn, and they'd fly up and they just come back down on the ground. So he thought, okay, I'm going to go in the kitchen. So he went in the kitchen, he broke up a bunch of bread, made all these little bread crumbs, and he went out and he tried to show the little birds, okay, come this way, come this way. The bread sank into the snow and the birds just looked at him like, what? So again, he tried to shoo them, he tried to give them more bread right close to them. Nothing worked. And he thought, if only I were a bird. And just then, the church bells rang out. It was midnight, the midnight service. And he thought, God incarnated to show us the light. If I were a bird, I could show them the light, could show them the way to warmth and freedom and light and joy. But he knelt in the snow and he understood that God had come to show him the way. So I'm going to read a little something from Master about happiness, which is really our true job in life. We think we have all these duties and all these important things to do. And I learned through these past few days of working on a few details back here that needed to be done, but I realized that they are so small. And if we keep focused on what's small, we don't know our true nature. Our true nature is so much bigger than that. Just to finish our little sojourn, we got home after many, many hours of traveling. Dharmadas did all the driving. But it was tiring, and we unloaded the car, which made the house a complete mess. And then the next day, which was yesterday, I was trying to put everything away and get it all back in order. And I found myself agitated. I was frustrated. It seemed like everything I tried to do either spilled or broke or fell on the floor or, just like, it was all just such chaos. And then I ran into this little quotation from Shantideva, who was an 8th century philosopher. He is a favorite of the Dalai Lama. And Shantideva was saying, we need to manage negative emotions so that they don't manage us. And one of his other quotations is that if there is a remedy to a situation, if there is a remedy, what is the use of frustration? If there is no remedy, what is the use of frustration? And it came at such a perfect time. It just settled my agitation. And that is the miracle of the teachings. And that's why we want to keep studying and keep reading and keep becoming a vessel for God's word to shine in our own lives and to radiate out to others. So, as I said, the purpose of life is to be happy. And Yogananda wrote this in one of his letters, a New Year's letter from 1941. Funny how it still applies. In the coming year, make your mind up that you will be happy, whether you are rich or poor, healthy or unhealthy, old or young. Don't wait for yourself or your family or your surroundings or the world to change before you can be happy. Change yourself. Make up your mind to be happy within yourself right now, whatever you are, whenever you are, wherever you are. Isn't that wonderful? And I just wanted to close with this other great saint, Thomas Aquinas, on the subject of happiness. Perfect happiness is not possible in this life, but we can approach it if we are busy with one thing, the contemplation of truth. And what is truth? Is truth the knowledge that conforms to my own life experiences? Is that truth? No, it's not truth. Only one true and divine truth exists, an ineffable mystery that we can't attain on earth. But possessing it is not the point. What matters for your progress towards perfect happiness is to approach it, to contemplate it with an open mind and an open heart.
This reading from Swami challenges us to understand Christ in a way that is beyond the personal, and that lovely little interchange between Master and Debbie Mukherjee kind of reinforces that. By the way, the Debbie Mukherjee he was naming there is not the Devi Mukherjee that we all got to know in India when we lived there and who visited Ananda and starting in the late 80s and early 90s several times from India. But anyway, it was a sweet little thing, and you have to appreciate the vigor with which he was he was relentless with Master. It was like, no, you are God, you are God. It's just back and forth and back and forth. And Master just kept, bringing him back. No, it's not me personally, it's the Spirit. But it helps us to be reminded that, as Nirmala was saying, there is this broader reality. Years ago, we traveled to Russia 6 times across the span of 6 or 7 years. And on the very first trip that we went, we were with devotees, we were teaching, we were giving programs that, they had us on this schedule. I swear, it started at about 6 in the morning, and the last class didn't end till like 10 in the night. It just, it was summertime in Russia, so these days go on forever. I almost got the feeling that they basically save up and sleep in the winter, and then when it's summertime, they're just awake all the time. Because it was getting light at 3:30 in the morning. It didn't get dark till about 11 in the night. Anyway, but one of the things that we realized on that trip was we went to an Orthodox church in which there was a pictorial depiction of 25,000 saints of the Orthodox tradition. And it was like a little mosaic, you could almost say, little tiny tiles that were about the size of a postage stamp, but there were 25,000 of them. And it was like, whoa. I did not know that there were 25,000 saints, period, let alone just in that tradition. And we'd heard basically of practically none of them. And what struck me is nobody cared that we knew or didn't know. They were happy to share with us. They were, honored to share their tradition and, the path that they had and knew about. And it was inspiring. I mean, the stories were incredible. Oh my Lord, they were just, amazing. But it struck me, and I learned a word recently. Swami was always learning new words, and his vocabulary was enormous. He would say, I haven't even mastered the English language, and he was a writer's writer. I mean, he just vast. So anyway, in that spirit, I've been learning new words. So I learned a word, sonder, S-O-N-D-E-R. I don't think you'll find it in the dictionary, but if you Google it, you will find a lovely definition, which is, it's sort of like ponder, but with an S, and the S is like to sound or to plumb. What it means is the realization that comes when you understand that every person you see is the main character in their own drama. And you are just a background piece, you're just one of the extras in their drama. And, it's sort of fascinating and it's could be even a little disturbing perhaps, but to think, oh, and that's one of the things that we realized over there is, here and that we see, as Americans, we often kind of think we're the center of the world's attention. Well, guess again. When you're out there someplace, they're very busy with their lives, and they may or may not think about America ever. And, it just was like, oh, okay. But masters describe truth, divine presence as center everywhere, circumference nowhere. And it just helps us to realize that this divine presence is in us and in every other person. And Swamiji had the deepest respect for that. And it was very touching to see, actually, because people would come and they would go, and he blessed them coming and he blessed them going. And it wasn't like he was, no, you have to stay here, you're making a big mistake. Even if they were making a big mistake, and many of them were, not all, many, but not all. But I remember some people who left under very difficult circumstances and with not a very pleasant energy about them. He had the opportunity to be with them. There was an astral ascension. There was a funeral for a member who was friends with lots of people, including those many who had left. And they all came. And afterwards, Swamiji said, and with very, very heartfelt, he said, they are all wonderful people. They wanted to know God in this lifetime. Whatever became of them afterwards, that's between them and God. But at least in this lifetime, they wanted to know God for a period of time. And what he saw in that, as I infer from it, is that if you think planting a seed to want to know God is planting a seed that must come up. It's not going to fail. That's a seed that cannot fail. And whether it comes in this lifetime, whether it comes in another lifetime, that's less relevant. But the seed got planted and it will sprout and it will flourish. Sooner or later, it must. So is it going to be sooner or is it going to be later? Well, that's up to us. He couldn't decide for people at what pace they needed to pursue the path. He could encourage, he could inspire, he could show the way, just as this lovely story that Nirmala told about this fellow with the birds. He wanted to incarnate as a bird so that he could show them, get to the barn, get dried off, get food, get shelter. Of course, as a bird, maybe you don't need as much of that, but still, he wanted to show that way. We, all of us, can learn from that by expanding the horizon of how we view the world. And like the masters do, they expand that sense of what's okay. Is it okay to seek God in this lifetime or not seek God? And everyone has their own choice to make. They decide. I mean, it's a little horrifying, I have to say, to realize that we can suffer for as long as we want to. We can continue the exploration. I mean, there was a lady who had discovered the concept of reincarnation. It was like, we get to come back. Oh my God, we get to come back. Wow. And, you might have a different perspective on that after you've come back a few too many times and had to suffer through teenage, high school or whatever, whatever your particular horror show is. It's a great inspiration. But it's not enough of an inspiration, because fear is maybe a motivator at the beginning. In fact, it's one of the reasons I think that other spiritual traditions try with such effort to put the fear of God in people, because it's like, get moving. Otherwise, God forbid, you're going to, whatever, fill in the blank. You're going to go to that bad place and it's going to be really scary and it's going to be icky and whatever. And you get the feeling that enough people have come back from those kinds of experiences, reincarnated from having those kinds of experiences, that they really, really don't want to go there again. Okay, fair enough. So you build the walled garden of consciousness that says, this far will I go, but no farther, God forbid. But that's not enough to get us to God. We have to, that devotional aspiration has to get ignited inside of us. Once it does, then it starts to create its own momentum, and it creates its own upward current that draws us naturally into that light. It's one of the reasons that Swamiji was very cautious about practices, spiritual practices that push the light, that force the energy up. Because he said what would happen is you can rise quickly doing those kinds of things, but if you don't have the devotion to support that rise, you fall just as quickly later on. And so you want to be a little cautious with stuff like that. But if you create the devotion, which is hard work, by the way, then whatever you rise, you stay at that level. You've learned to create that supporting energy for it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful realization. And I am so grateful reading this passage. Whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, let's look around. Has anybody ever seen virtue decline and vice predominate? Yeah, you could look around and say, that's kind of how it looks. Think of what Master lived through. My Lord. He lived through 2 world wars, a disastrous famine in Bengal. I mean, just think of the suffering that was going on in the world. And he's traveling back and forth across oceans, living in this country, facing incredible bigotry and racism. I mean, it was horrifying. He lived through all of that to help show us a way that it is possible to have this realization inside. Outwardly, there's a limited amount we can change. And Nirmala made the point, and it's very well taken. When that light is in us strongly, it starts to shine out. And as it shines out, it blesses the world and affects the world and inspires the world. We can inspire change. We can't force change. Or if we do, it's not going to be very good change. But we can inspire it to the degree that we can find that realization in ourselves. So let's embrace that divine light and live in that light.
Blessed, blessed, the life that is given to God. Blessed, blessed, the ways where his feet have trod, all the joys that you all dangers from your path be moved, all delusion by his truth disproved. Blessed, blessed, the life that is given to God. Blessed, blessed, the heart open to his love. Blessed, blessed, the light that shines from above. All the wealth for which men ever schemed, all the beauty ever dreamed, all the gains for which men sigh and moan, will be harvested in God